Hi guys, come on in. About to get started. Our first live YouTube channel stream, I guess is what to call it. I'm super excited. Um, and just inviting you all to come in, ask any questions that you have. Um, Probably will help the sound a little bit if I took those out. Okay, cool. So yeah, we're live. And tonight was just really a night for you all to get to know me a little bit, ask any questions that you might have. And I may do a demonstration just depending on how much time we have. So my name is Eboni Nichole, and I am the managing director and CEO of Nichole and Associates. I'm also our training manager. I just love training. So probably almost 6.5 years ago now, I started Nichole and Associates. You'll hear me reference it as ENA. And my first contract was actually doing SharePoint training. So I am definitely, goodness, 10 plus years in the game now with SharePoint through Microsoft 365 or quote unquote SharePoint Online. So if you have any questions about SharePoint, I got you. I was a SharePoint administrator and developer for many years in corporate. And now I am a SharePoint administrator to a few of my clients. I also am a Power BI developer. Um, so I am certified in Power BI. I'm also a CompTIA certified technical trainer. I have many Microsoft certifications. So I am a certified Microsoft professional and trainer. Yeah, let's see, fun thing. I got certified in Microsoft Excel when I was a junior in high school. How about that? I won't say how long ago that was, but it was quite some time ago. I got certified in Microsoft Excel when I was a junior in high school. I also got certified in Access and Microsoft Word, and I think I may have gotten a PowerPoint certification too. So if you have any questions regarding any of those things, of course, like I said, just feel free to ask. You can drop them in the chat. I'm trying to keep an eye on the chat. Trying to keep an eye on the chat so that if you have any questions that come in for me, I can answer them. Hey, Kat, I see established Kat. I'm glad that you joined. Thank you for watching. So what else about me? Like I said, I've been in business now for about 6.5 years. We've entered into our year 7. It'll be 7 years in September. And I also am a SQL developer. How could I forget that? So I'm not sure how much we'll focus on SQL on this channel, but I do have some plans to maybe throw a few SQL Saturdays in there for anyone that's interested in learning coding or maybe just getting started. So I've developed in SQL since 2013, 2014. So I have just under 10 years experience as a SQL developer. I've already shared that I'm a Power BI developer, Word, Microsoft Office professional, certified expert. I would never say that about myself, but that's what the certificate says, that I am a certified expert. So yes. Let's see. So tonight, I guess since we don't have a ton of questions coming in, I am going to share my screen and just walk through how to do a pivot table. And so as I'm going through, for those of you that may not have much experience with doing a pivot table or something that you maybe could use on the job, hopefully this little intro will be useful to you. So let me go ahead and share my screen. Oh, Philip. Hi, Mr. Tanks. Your question, has Microsoft Teams replaced Skype? You know what? I cannot say that I miss Skype. I actually really love Microsoft Teams. I started using Microsoft Teams in 2014, 2015, maybe, when it was still in beta. It was still in beta. And so I love Teams. I thought it was so fun that we were able to send back and forth the gifts, right? Everybody tries to call them something different, GIFs or gifts, but the little gifts, I was like, this is so cool. And we couldn't do that in Skype. And Skype, the best you could do was like a little emoticon. So Teams was, I jumped right on board with Teams. But yes, Teams has replaced Skype. Microsoft no longer supports Skype. I think it was sunset as being supported maybe in 2019, don't quote me. But yes, Teams is the new, what you get with your package. You're not able to install Skype with the new Office 365 packages. It's not even an option. Teams is the only option there. So it sounds like maybe we would do some Teams training or go through kind of some team stuff here in the near future, because I am a firm believer that a lot of times when we don't like different tools is because we really don't know how to use them, right? We're not using them to, and some tools just suck, but Teams doesn't suck. But a lot of times it's frustrating when you don't understand everything or you're not fully aware of all that's available. It kind of makes it, not that fun to use. So maybe we'll do some Teams training. But all right, I got my screen sharing here, and I just pulled this random data from Excel. So it's sample financial data. It looks like it's maybe some sales information. So we have different products. I have no clue what they're selling, but they have different, looks like maybe 6 different products being sold in different countries. They have different segments. So they're selling to the government or mid-market or channel partners or small businesses. So it looks like we have a few different segments to choose from. Is there anything here under the discount band? Okay, so we have none, low, medium, and high as an option for discount. And then this actually looks like it's a record of recorded sales. So it's giving us a ton of stuff. Units sold, the cost to manufacture it, the sales price, the cost of the goods sold, which I imagine would be some type of derivative here, because we're looking at 16,185 and that's 16. Yep. Okay, super fun. So this is going to be fun. This is a lot of data. Like I said, I just dumped this from Microsoft.com. I think I may have just Googled Excel sample data and I grabbed the first one that came from the Microsoft website, but it's over 700 rows of data here. And we can see when sales took place, the month that it happened, the actual date, the year that it took place, the profit that we made, and things like that. But what is this really telling me? So before we jump into doing the pivot table, for those of you that are maybe new to pivot table, what is a pivot table? And the technical definition of a pivot table probably something like a table that categorizes individual items distinctly for you, or something to that effect. But to me, it's just a summary of data, right? It's just going to take the data that we're looking at, these 700 rows of data, and it's going to aggregate it for us. It's going to group stuff up in light grouping. So it'll take everything here under segment for government and smush it together for us. It does the smushing or summarizing of the data, and then we're able to slice it and dice it in a way that's most meaningful for us. So let's go ahead and jump right in. I'm in Excel here. I'm going to go to the Insert tab. And before I do it the way that I would build a pivot table, something that Excel offers is recommended pivot table. So let's go ahead and just click on that to kind of see what they're recommending. So this is Excel's attempt at saying, I see your data. Here's what I think makes the most sense of a pivot table given the data on the tab. So it's saying, why don't you do a sum of profit by country? Okay. So it's going to roll up the sum, which we have in our profit column here. It's going to roll up that profit by country. Or you can do sum of product, it looks like, which product actually had a name in it. So unless they changed that to account field, we wouldn't really have a sum. But it says sum of profit by segment in year. So not only are we slicing it here by the segment, but we also are going to slice it by year. So that's a fun way to look at it. Looks like they recommended a few more. None of these really solve what we want. The question I want to tackle is not profit, but what was my revenue or my sales for 2013 for small business? That's the question that I want to answer. And so let's create a pivot table and see if we can get to that answer. Let me write it down so that I don't forget. We want to know total revenue in 2013 by segment. Okay. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and click here. So remember this one where we just kind of saw some of their suggestions, which would at least get you started. If you're uncomfortable with pivot tables, clicking on any one of these gets you started, and then you can go in and modify it. But today we're going to do it from scratch. So I'm going to go ahead and just click on the button for pivot table. Excel automatically picks up on the range of data. So as long as there are no gaps in the columns, it will pick up everything that is, I want to say, congruent. So we have the segment column, the country column, the product column. If I then inserted a blank column, that would break up the data. It would cause there to be two different tables. So when I went to insert the pivot table, it wouldn't know if I meant table 1 or table 2. I would have to kind of specify. But because there's no break in the data here, it's picked up, and we can kind of see these like moving dotted little dashes lets you know that data is currently being selected. Not really selected, but it's within the view of the range that the pivot table has selected. If we wanted to change it, you just click on this up arrow here, and then I'd be able to just take my mouse and come in and kind of like highlight the data. So maybe I really only wanted to analyze the first 30 rows, not all 700. I could come in and manually drag it to show what data I'm going to be picking up on. But I actually want to let it make the suggestion for me. And so I'm going to cancel out and start over so that it picks up on everything. And then the next option I have here is choose where you want the pivot table to be placed. Do I want to put in a new worksheet or in an existing worksheet? I'm going to just go with a new worksheet, but if you wanted it to be like on sheet 1, maybe off to the right-hand side, you could totally do that. This option here that says add this data to the data model would be if we were already building a data model. We will get into data models soon in the future, but that's just all of your data coming together, and you kind of telling the data where to go. So if I wanted to, let's say this was all that I have for 2013 and 2014, and then I created a pivot table from here, and then I end up getting importing more data maybe for 2015, I could add that to the data model, if that makes sense. But because we're just starting from scratch, we don't need to do that. And I'm going to go ahead and click on new worksheet. All right, now this looks a little scary. It's like, what happened to my data? What is going on here? So we have a lot of different options here. It says choose fields to add to the report. And then we have 4 different categories of where we would add those fields. So we can either create the fields in our pivot table as a filter. We could create them as columns, as rows, or as values. So for the rows, I want to go with segment. So I'm going to come up here to segment. I'm going to grab it and drag it down into rows. So now I have my segments on the rows. Okay, and I said I wanted to know what the total revenue or total sales was for the year 2013. So I need to have year, and it makes most sense to put the years as the columns. So see what happens here. Now I have columns that have the year. That way I'm able to easily look at it and see what was going on in 2013. So really all that's left to make this complete is to go ahead and go and grab the sales. I'm going to go with the gross sales and I'm going to drag that down into values. So I've told it what, I've told it how, and then now it's give me the values for what I've selected. So just that quickly, we were able to take all of this scary data and summarize it here. So now I can tell you that the channel partners segments in 2013 had gross sales or total revenue of $432,804. And then if we wanted to format this data, we can just do it like we would normally format. So I'm going to come in and put, some commas in there so we can get some, maybe even put a $sign on there. You can format it like however you want. Let's change, I'll show you that in a second. Let's change the totals as well to have, and then I don't want any decimals. Not really concerned with the coins at this high dollar, so I'm going to turn off my decimals. And I did that here under the number formatting section. I just clicked on this option that goes to the right that decreases the decimals. Yep, so now I'm able to see here that small business in 2013 made $9 million in revenue. The government segment had $14 million in revenue. And so I double clicked a little hastily a few seconds ago, but I come here to the grand total. And if you double click, it'll actually open up a new sheet for you. And now this new sheet has grouped everything together so I can see exactly which sales make up that total that I grabbed on. So let's go back and let me slow it down a little bit. So for 2013, grand total in sales, I want to change this from gross sales to revenue because I said I wanted to talk about revenue. So I'm going to rename this field. Let's see, I'm going to come here under values where I put it. And I get some formatting. I'm going to go to value field setting. And then up here, I have the option to give it a custom name. So I'm just going to change that to total revenue. And then under this same settings box, you have the option to go from summarizing it as a sum, which we're adding it up, or I could just take the count. So not how much money did I make, but how many sales did I have, right? So I'd be able to take account of the transactions and say, we had 13 sales in the month of December, but only 12 sales in the month of January. Like I'd be able to make those type of comparisons. You could also go for an average. You could go for the max. Maybe you wanted to know what was the most, who had the biggest sales. Maybe it's a competition, right? We've offered whichever segment who had the highest sale cookies for Christmas. So if I wanted to see who did the most quantitatively out of the segments, I can change this to the max. Let's just do it so we see what it looks like. Okay, so now I'm not looking at a summary anymore. I'm not looking at I am looking at a summary, excuse me, I'm not looking at the sum. Now I'm simply looking at the largest number. So it looks like government had the single most highest sale, which was $1,038 or $38,100. And if I double click on that, then I'm able to specifically see what made up that. All right, so let's go back. All right, so I don't really want the max. I really want the I want the sum. And I just wanted to change that to say, oh, I didn't save my name change. Let me go back in. I wanted to say total revenue. And then I'm going to click OK. And so now you see here that just changed it to total revenue there, as well as here in my in my areas down here. Okay, we were going somewhere before we did that. We did the double click. I wanted to change the name. Oh, and then we could see what made up each bracket of cells. I don't know what else to do with this. This is how you would create a pivot table. It's super simple. It doesn't take a ton of time. You're able to play with this. You can slice it however you want. Like right now, we're looking at 2013. But if we wanted to break it down, we could bring in the month, right? So maybe I want to see the month under the year, so I can drag it there. So like I can see specifically what month these sales took place in. Maybe I'm not really curious in the year. I just want to see the month, right? How did we perform? How do we typically perform in January or February, right? So it's now aggregating all years, but just saying in that month. That way we can say, well, over the last 2 years, sales have been this much in January, this much in March. We seem to do better here or there. Hopefully this was helpful. If you have any questions, I will wait just a couple seconds to see. Let me see what else I can do while I wait to see if any questions come in. So I don't want to overload. We could change the color on this. So the pivot table design is separate from, so like right now I'm on the home tab and I have like where I would format a normal table. But for your pivot table, you're actually going to design that somewhere separately. So look here at the top of my screen, you see where my mouse is in green, pivot table, analyze and design. That is only available when I'm inside the pivot table. So I'm going to click outside of the pivot table. I just clicked here at G18. Those options go away. My menu has changed. But when I click back into the pivot table, they come back. I'm just going to go under design. And instead of blue and white, let's make it dark. Ooh, I like that. What about this? Crazy. Let's stick with this one. I like this with the dark black labels. And then we have the blue with the soft white in there. So I think that's good. But you can totally format this in whatever way makes sense to you. You could even create your own pivot style. So if you have a template that you've used for a table before and you want the pivot table to match it, you can import it. Most of these are pretty customizable right now. Bandit rows would maybe change it from blue, all blues to blue and white. And a lot of people find that tables are easier to read when you break up the color some. With it all being the same color, it might be a little hard on the eye. So if we go ahead and turn on bandit rows, come on. That puts, so did we see how like it added our lines in between there to make it a little bit easier to read? And then I'm going to do just an alternating color. So I have my light blue and then my dark blue. So it's a little bit easier on the eyes. If you wanted to turn off the column headers, you could take the boldness off of that style so it doesn't apply to it. And then let's see this, the subtotals. Yeah, they're in a pretty good spot, but there would be times where you could have subtotals coming in under each section. So if we flipped this and you wanted to see, like, give me the total here, let me show you what I mean. So if I put this here, all right, so there we go. So you see how I just brought the month name down here. So now we're able to see like category total. So that's what I mean by like the subtotals being there. So I can see the subtotal for channel partners was the 1.9 million. Subtotal for enterprise was 21 million. And then you can also collapse these. All right. What would make more sense to collapse under the segments, just giving our data, would be not so much the month name, but the country. So let's just grab country, drag it under our segment. And so now then I can see how each country performed within that segment. And then again, I can collapse that if I needed to. Well, okay, can you turn those data, any of it into a pie chart? You absolutely can. So once we have the data here, we can add charts. I do think that that would be something here, just because you asked, I'm going to do it, but we're going to do charts and graphs and knickknacks with that coming up in the weeks to come. But with this data that we have here, there is a thing called a pivot chart. So here I went under pivot table analyze, and then I'm going to go under pivot chart. So now that the data is aggregated, I can come in and just pick a chart based off of the data that I've aggregated. So do you see how if I would have created this chart using all of the data from sheet one, it would not have come out like this. But because I've already told it how I want my categories, what I want my columns to look like, it's a lot easier to create a chart now that shows it. And so each segment has its own color. Let's see, we can take this and put some razzle dazzle on it. Let's see if we can get some data labels. And let's just add some quick data labels. No, not, yeah, okay. I don't like those. Let's see, I want some that I like. There we go, outside in. Perfect. So now we can kind of see the data labels attached to it. Great question, Kat. Thank you for asking that. And do you see how super simple that was? I'm going to delete it. I'm going back to my pivot table. I'm going under pivot table, analyze, and then I'll go to a pivot chart. So think about like if we were just adding a chart to regular data, we would come under insert and then we go to the chart that we're choosing. But once we've aggregated the data into a pivot table, Excel says, let me take that aggregate data and then offer you a chart. And so then I go here, you ask for a pie chart, and I was able to kind of click that. Let's do a 3D chart. And like I said, let's give it a little razzle dazzle. I like a black background, and then we'll add some data labels. There we go. See how super simple that was? Well, thank you so much for joining, you all. For those that will catch the replay, drop any questions that you have. I will definitely be answering questions and also doing more videos based off what you want to see and what's helpful to you. Again, my name is Eboni Nichole with E. Nichole and Associates. I am your IT Microsoft 365 Bay, and I appreciate you for joining. Hit the subscribe button, like the video, and do they still have the little alert dingly? If they do, click on the bell so that you can be alerted whenever we post new videos. Have a good night.